Hey, let's talk cameras, shall we? Yay! So it's now been about 5 months since I went and bought myself one of these Fuji Mega Fujis. And while there are plenty of reasons why I bought into this camera system in the first place, recently I've been using it in a way that I absolutely was not thinking about when I bought this camera kit. What way, you might ask? Well, none other than as a panoramic camera. I think I might have inadvertently purchased the dream panoramic camera I've always wanted with the Fuji GFX. So for the meat of this video, I'm just going to talk about some of the panoramic systems I've used in the past that were film-based, what kind of features I was looking to when I tried all of them out, and then why the Fuji GFX seems to be checking off every one of those wants off my panoramic want list, okay? So let's start by turning back the clock all the way to 2017. In 2017 is when I bought my first panoramic camera, the 6x17 Dai, some letter code I forget, but it's a 6x17. I bought it with a Nikon, a Nikon, yes, and a Nikon 90mm lens to do all of my panoramic, big nig panoramic photos. So while I was shopping around for the perfect 617 camera to buy back in the day, the intended purpose I wanted it for was for like shooting on a tripod, much like I would do with my regular big view camera. I was initially also looking heavily into the Fuji's big 617 camera as well, but that system had one thing I didn't really like about it, which was a fixed lens. You know what I'm talking about? Not like a zoom lens, a fixed lens, so it's not attached to the body, because when I like to work on a tripod with a large format camera, I really value front rise. You see that? You see that? How it moves up and down? To me, that is just like a critical feature when I work on a tripod. I want it, I always want it, and when I don't have it, it just feels like I'm having to struggle and so considering that, I probably could have gone the way of just buying a panoramic back for my view camera, and it would have checked off that mark of the risey front rise camera, and that would have been really cool and worked really well. But I had a second want, and not so big of a want, but just something I wanted to try. So I've been looking at the panoramic work done by Stuart Clipper, who also shoots a 6x17 camera, a Linhof I believe, but kind of does it in a real casual handheld way. Like it's like these big giant 6x17 snapshots half the time it looks like. I find them really cool, and so I was like, maybe I want a camera that I can also kind of just maybe hang around my neck and walk around and bloop, takes a couple of big panoramic snapshots every now and then. So that's what kind of led me to this as well, because as you can see, look at that. Tripod lugs. Strap lugs. Yeah, the right terminology. And then it's also got like a scale focus meter, so I can, go, okay, 15 feet. Boom, snapshot. But ultimately, the Dai wasn't that good for handheld. The viewfinder on it is absolutely terrible, garbage, and I hate it. And I was never quite totally confident shooting by scale focus. Even though I believe that's how the Linhof and the Fujis work, is scale focus, that's just the way it is for 617. It never really sat right with me, so ended up using it handheld a couple of times, but not really that much to get the use out of the ergonomics that I had bought it for. So to scratch that itch of snapshot-ish, easy, quick, on the run and gun panoramic photos, I ended up just picking up the 35mm kit for my Mamiya 6, so then I get all the luxury of a nice camera with a rangefinder, a focus, and a meter to meter, but in a little panoramic mode, and it worked pretty well. I took a bunch of pictures I liked with it, and my only kind of real gripe is that, given that there's only 3 lenses for that kit, the widest I could have was not quite as wide as I wanted, so, what are you gonna do? Not much. So I existed with these 2 cameras as my panoramic 1-2 punch. Little jab with the Mamiya for a quick snapshot, then a big haymaker from the Dai on the tripod to knock your socks off with panoramic goodness. But then I bought this thing, this Fuji Mega Fuji digital camera for reasons, like I said, for reasons not related to panoramic photography. But after I'd owned it for a while, I realized something. Do you see this? Do you see this? Look at that right there, the black bar on top and bottom. That is an in-camera panoramic crop. I didn't know it did that when I bought this. Holy crap! This is a 65 by 24 ratio crop, which is the same as the Fuji TX1, aka the Hasselblad XPan format, and it's also just marginally stubbier than the 617 format I was working with, so that's all fine. That's kind of the ratio I've been looking for. Obviously, taking a full-sized, not panoramic image and cropping it down to a panoramic size is nothing new. Plenty of cheap 35mm point-and-shoot cameras that already had this built in. The old disgusting Kodak APS format kind of crutched on this to give you the chop the already tiny negative into a panoramic and then blow it up bigger so my mom could pay even more money for prints to get a lower quality photo that's been panoramic cropped. Oh, I'm so glad APS died. But doing this digitally is also nothing new. It's been around forever. But to the best of my knowledge, I think this might be the first time a camera has added the frame lines for this in camera. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't really done all my research on this, but none of my previous Fujis that I've owned that are digital have had this feature, and it's pretty cool because you're not like having to put black tape on your viewfinder and ruining half the screen or anything if you want to do this in camera. But once I realized this is a feature that could be utilized, I got really curious. So I went online to a field of view calculator and asked it, "Hey, Mr. Computer, what size lens on the smaller Fuji sensor will give me the same left and right field of view as the 90mm on my big 617 camera?" And Mr. Computer was like, and it was like, 23mm is about what you're looking for. And holy shit! As luck would have it, Fuji made a 23mm lens for this system. And as luck would extra have it, they had just introduced a zoom lens that covers 20 to 32mm, I believe. So with this new zoom hitting the market, a lot of people with more money to spend than I do were trading in their 23mm prime to get this brand new awesome zoom that covers the same focal length and a little more. So what ended up happening was I picked up a copy of this 23mm prime lens at a pretty hefty discount as someone was unloading it to get the new zoom lens. So as far as a walk around, run and gun, snap shit panoramic camera goes, that lens on the Fuji GFX has been a dream to work with. No wondering if what I'm aiming at is actually in view because I'm getting a direct image instead of some garbage viewfinder. No scale focus, I can see my focus if it's dead on. I can use autofocus if I want. There's a meter so I can just meter everything in camera. Excuse me, you said that this camera was hitting all of your panoramic wants, and one of those wants was to have front rise on your camera lens, and this Fuji GFX has a fixed lens camera, so you're obviously lying to us. Checkmate. Not so fast, pessimist. I said what I said, and I stand by what I said. Sure, Fuji has announced that a few tilt shift lenses are probably going to be released next year, but who knows how god-awful expensive those are going to be. But by utilizing one little trick that photographers hate, with the 65 by 24mm ratio, pretty much every lens can become a, well, not a tilt shift lens, is what I'm doing, doesn't offer any lateral shift or tilt, but more of a no tilt rise fall lens. Hear me out. So what I've been doing to fake front rise is a fairly simple idea once you think about it, but let me explain. So I find a subject, I take my Mega Fuji, I aim it, I frame it, I make sure that everything left to right is where I want it, up and down is where I want it, it's all good, and then I take the back of the camera and I swipe down. And what this does is it turns on, it already has the left-right level, but this turns on the front, you know, bobbing bird for water level. So I have my framing, and I just rotate the camera till it's level, and click the click. So now the auto-cropped in-camera JPEG in panoramic mode doesn't really quite hit my subject, but the thing is, the camera also captures a RAW file which contains everything above and below the panoramic. So I just go into the editing software afterwards, grab the panoramic thing and slide it up until it's exactly what I want to be in the composition. Verticals are level because the camera was level. That little extra space above and below the panoramic area just kind of gives you some alternate way of achieving rise and fall. I guess it kind of simulates a rear rise and fall instead of a front rise and fall. Pretend this Taco Bell fire sauce is the film and this lens is a lens. So what I've been doing in the past was I aim the camera like this and I move the lens up and down, but now I'm essentially locking the lens in place, and by cropping out of the photo, I'm moving the sensor up and down. Pretty neat little idea to turn the entire range of lenses you can put onto this into a panoramic rise-fall lens. And that is how the Fuji GFX accidentally became my panoramic dream camera. And I know what you're thinking right now, you film sons of bitches. You're probably like, but hey, you don't get as much resolution as a giant negative, and that's true. When I scan my 617 negatives, I end up with something like 16,000 by some, but that's only because I tone it down. I could jack it up even more if I wanted. But here's the thing. I've had this panoramic camera for 5 years. You know what the biggest print I ever made was? 24 inches. You know why I made it 24 inches? Because that's as wide as my printer goes, and I never wanted to do it the long way to make like a 24 by 60 inch print, because that's pretty too big unless someone's giving me a lot of money for it, and no one has given me a lot of money for it yet. Comparing a nice 24 inch wide panoramic print made with the Mega Fuji, the quality of this, it's as good, maybe better. Who knows? At this size, at the size I'm comfortable and want to print, it's a fucking banger, okay? And that's what matters. So that, I think, is all I really wanted to yell about for a while. So if you're interested in some other panoramic work I've done, here's an old video from a couple years ago talking about my Across the Midwest bar sign project. Check that out. I'll probably do some more on it in the future.